If Kamala gets 4 more years, the entire country will be turned into a migrant camp, and that's what's happening. Millions and millions of people. When I win on November 5th, the migrant invasion ends and the restoration of our country begins.
Well, that was Donald Trump saying that he will end what he refers to as migration invasion if elected to power. Trump plans to double down on the anti-immigration rhetoric that was at the center of his first term as US president. He has pledged to conduct the largest deportation program in American history and to introduce a new ideological screening to bar quote-unquote dangerous lunatics. Not just that, he may also seek to end automatic citizenship for children born to immigrants living illegally in the country. His rival, Democratic candidate Kamala Harris, has largely been silent on the illegal immigration issue. When pressed about the matter in a recent interview with Fox News, Harris said the country has a broken immigration system that needs to be fixed. Earlier this year, she had also criticized Trump for telling congressional Republicans to block a bipartisan border measure. Another issue that Trump recently faced criticism for was his comments in an interview to Fox News. Trump suggested using the military to handle the enemy from within on Election Day. He referred to Democrats Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff as examples of enemy from within. Later, his running mate J.D. Vance clarified that Trump's comments were not directed at the Democratic Party leaders, but at dissenting Americans he described as far-left lunatics. Hello and welcome to our special programming on the US presidential election. I'm Parikshit Luthra, and joining us now to discuss all of this is Ambassador Anil Trigunayat, former Indian envoy to Libya and Jordan, also a distinguished fellow at the Vivekananda International Foundation. Also with us is Azi Paybarah, journalist with the Washington Post, and Mitchell Brown, professor of political science at US Auburn University. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. Azi, if I could begin with you, the campaign now in the final lap, everything is heating up in those 7 battleground states. How's Kamala Harris's approach different from Donald Trump here?
So Kamala Harris has been trying to not only call Donald Trump a fascist and warn about the dangers that he could pose to democracy, she's trying to make that point explicit about how it relates to voters, saying that this is not just like a theoretical argument. She's saying that this affects individual voters in the way that they go about conducting their lives every day. And she's trying to make also the broader point that Donald Trump is more focused on his enemies and getting retribution for perceived slights, rather than focusing on issues like the economy or helping people find jobs or lower the cost of healthcare and everyday goods. So she's trying to make the point that Donald Trump has his own agenda and his own perceived issues, and that voters would be better served by electing her.
Right. Professor Brown, if I were to ask you about the political exploitation of immigration-related fears. Now, this is not new to American politics. It has happened in the early 90s as well. But where have we come in terms of American politics? Yes, there is a shift towards the right globally, but when it comes to taking a hard line on immigration, how do you see the two parties really different at this point and the two candidates?
The United States is certainly a country of immigrants, and both of the candidates are trying to use the immigration discussion to bolster their base and to turn out voters. Trump is obviously using it in a way to stir fear among his voters and to say he's going to be the person who's tough on immigration, tying immigration and illegal immigration to crime where he can. The Harris campaign has a gentler approach to immigration than the Trump campaign does, because they are trying, in fact, to appeal to their base there as well.
Right. Ambassador Trigunayat, give us a sense of how you expect the United States to crack down on immigration, illegal migration to the United States after this election. Looking at the kind of words that have been used, the sharp rhetoric that has been used in this election, we've got Trump going to say that there are immigrants who are actually cutting your throats. He's accused immigrants of poisoning the blood of our country. Harris has pledged a tough stance and warned of consequences of illegal immigration as well. How do you expect the United States to act against illegal immigration, children of illegal migrants? For example, how do you expect Donald Trump to act?
Well, I think, Parikshit, Donald Trump's policies have been very clear from the very beginning that he has this anti-immigrant issues, and he has been trying to even create a wall along the Mexican border, being very harsh, deportations, not allowing the children to be, even those who were born in this, of the illegal immigrants, to be given the rights. So at the moment, I think that the Trump has this very hardline. He's trying to encash it while he's talking of making USA great again. Mawa now, do you think has come? Then he is also looking at the possibility and his Midwest belt of people that these foreigners who are coming in here are taking away jobs. He might even be asking more and more companies, like he did last time, to come and invest in the US, create jobs there, and try to reduce the unemployment, number one, and the immigration as a firewall, basically. That's what he precisely intends to create. But at this moment, what I see is exactly, it's very difficult to say how none of them is very clear exactly, except we know their insinuations and the kind of things they do. But they have a reality to contend with. And that reality is in most of the Western countries, the population growth is minimal, essentially, or even negative. And they are all facing graying countries. They do need illegal immigration. So illegal immigration, nobody can support really. That it should be allowed to continue or whatever it is. So as long as they do not try to restrict more the visas like H-1B visas and others, countries like India are unlikely to be suffering much more against this. We had this problem last time. Prime Minister Modi had discussed with President Trump on this issue. But this election, what one sees more is basically too much of sleaze, too much of toxicity and personal vendetta that you're looking at it. It is not any visionary kind of a thing. So virtually one is choosing out of the worst positions. That is what is currently that one is looking at.
Right.
My fear is whatever happens, because it's currently they both are pitted against one another in a very tight race. So the outcome of this election is going to be a very, very difficult outcome if it is very close. And if Trump loses, you might have a problem of transition, as we have seen it. So that is something that needs to be watched rather than how the election is going to play out, because US and of course these polls and all, after seeing what happened in India, also in our state, Haryana here, I tell you, I mean, I have begun to not believe in these polls, basically.
Okay, so you don't believe in these polls, but of course, currently Kamala Harris has a slight edge, maybe by 2 percentage points or 3 percentage points in some of the opinion polls, but it's within the margin of error. So you can't really say that she has a clear advantage. Azi, if I can come back to you right now, as we were discussing the issue of immigration, do you think Kamala Harris and the Democrats find it hard to keep themselves out of the immigration rhetoric within the United States? And how much time are both the candidates practically giving to this one issue in their campaign speeches wherever they go?
So Donald Trump focuses a lot of his campaign efforts talking about immigration. If you ask, how are you going to help Americans find better housing? He says, well, I'll help reduce the cost of housing by deporting illegal immigrants. If you ask about inflation, if you ask about anything with the economy, Donald Trump always seems to bring an answer back to saying that he's going to deport large numbers of undocumented and illegal immigrants from the United States. A lot of economists and experts who look at this don't really see exactly how those two issues connect. But when Donald Trump is speaking to his supporters, when he's speaking to voters at these large rallies, he gets a lot of applause. And polling has shown that he is neck and neck with Kamala Harris. This is what he's putting out to voters. When Kamala Harris speaks about the border and immigration, she speaks about needing to improve security along the border and to help people vet their claims for seeking asylum. People come to the United States because of its freedom and its guarantees of protection. And Kamala Harris is saying that people need to have a more orderly process to put those claims forward and have them vetted before people can stay with legal guarantees. Donald Trump is stressing a different point. He's saying his emphasis is on removing people from the United States. When Kamala Harris talks about immigration, at times it can be defensive because she is the sitting vice president. And at one point, President Joe Biden had asked her to communicate with Central American countries to figure out why exactly are so many people leaving that part of the world and coming to the southern border. Donald Trump has labeled her the border czar, which is not quite an accurate description of what she was asked to do, but that's the argument he's presenting to voters.
Right. Let me go across to Professor Brown once again. Professor Brown, what is this election and also the elections that we've seen in America since 2016, since we had Donald Trump winning the election? Even in 2020, when he lost and Joe Biden won, he had a considerable vote bank to himself. Now, what does this election and the mood of the United States and the average citizen of the United States does to government policy making in the days to come? Do we expect United States to become more inward-looking? As we've seen with the Inflation Reduction Act, one of the objectives was to make sure that more companies, US companies, move out of China or set up more manufacturing within the United States. So do you expect, irrespective of who wins the US election, come the 5th of November, do you expect the policy making towards jobs, towards the economy, to become more inward-looking, looking at the debate over immigration right now?
Well, what I expect on November 5th is that we won't be focused much on those issues. Instead, what we'll be focused on is who's actually won this election. I think the American public and their attention will be drawn to the court cases that will inevitably follow this election to try and determine who the actual winner is. We will revert more to an inward focus on the economy, but it is clear that our economic strength is also dependent on our relation with other countries around the world. And the focus of the American people, though, will be on what the new presidency will do for them as people, as families, and their communities. But the immediate attention, I think, will be on who the actual president's going to be. We might see a number the day after the election, but I don't expect that the election will be over then.
All right. 5th of November. Azi, the question that many people are asking, looking at the polls, which are so close right now, is it possible that we may not have a election result by late 5th evening? What's going to happen then?
If I knew what was going to happen. Most people that I've spoken to are expecting election night to be a long night, and that even the following morning, it may not be clear who is winning. And also, just as the professor said, many people are expecting legal challenges. In the United States, elections are run by local officials. It is not run by the federal government. So the kind of rules that you have in a battleground state like North Carolina or Georgia are different than the rules you might have in other important states like Michigan. So what we've seen in the past are some people who believe that there were election fraud or things that were irregular and want to challenge the results of the election. The Congress has the job of counting the certified results that the states send to Washington, D.C. after the election. Some people are bracing for a number of legal challenges that could extend the process well past election night.
Right. Yes, that is an outcome we're also preparing for, but we'll take a break at this point. We request all our guests to stay with us. We'll be right back after a short commercial break.